Hello, and if you're watching this, congrats, you're a tight ass like me. In this video, I'm going to go over my setup for shooting with Leica without putting your bank balance in the dumpster. First off, you do not need to buy an M6 or an MP at the prices they cost. If you're a hobbyist or a working professional, it's just unfeasible. I can remember a couple of years ago seeing videos on YouTube of guys saying like, yeah, I spent my entire bank balance on buying a 1DX Mark II. It's just not worth going broke to own a camera. If you can get a great deal or you can afford an M6 or an MP out of pocket, by all means go for it. But if you can't, here's a workaround. First in line, things to add to your cart. A Leica body. So some good alternatives to an M6 are just about any of the other Leica bodies that came out before it. So an M2, an M3, an M4, an M4P, and there's like another MP version, M5. No one uses the M5 because it's ugly, and you can get an M2, an M3, or an M4 for $2,000 or less, $2,000 or less, and that's in Australian dollars. They are more or less the same as far as I can tell. I haven't used them all, and I don't really plan to because the one that I have is good enough for me and it's good enough for what I want to do with it. I have the M4P. It looks quite a lot like an M6, so in that sort of aesthetic way, you're getting halfway there already. As far as other things go, I'm sure there's something to be said about build quality for an M4P or an M4 versus an M6, but they're just things I'm not really that worried about. The M2s were made in the 1950s, so the way I think about it is if it's still working 50 years later, 60 years later, it's probably still going to be working when the film trend dies out. A big drawback to these earlier bodies and the reason that the M6 is so popular is because they don't have an internal light meter. You'd have to use a handheld or find another workaround. And this directly leads into my second point, is an on-camera light meter. So this one that I use is the Kex EM01, which cost me like $170 Australian shipped to my front door, and it is the best. I don't have any complaints about it. I've seen videos of people comparing it directly to an M6 light meter, and generally it's dead on. So you pretty much just press the button, you meter the scene, copy the settings, you're good to go. It's super small, it comes in black or silver, so if you get a black M4 or a silver M4, you can get one that matches, like the black one, because it matches mine. It looks really nice, it looks pretty seamless, it looks like part of the camera. And yeah, like I said, this one only cost me like $170 delivered to your door, which is very cheap, very affordable. If you're talking in the grand scheme of photography things, $170 is cheap as. I used to use a Sekonic handheld light meter to meter everything for my Leica, and that was just awful. And I never want to do it again. So let's do a quick recap. Your grand total for a Leica M body with an external light meter that's just as good as the M6 is just over $2,100. But now you need a lens, which is arguably the most important part of this whole thing. Honestly, the lens is the most important purchase. In terms of sharpness, your film is only going to get you so far, and the body does nothing. The body is just a dark box where the light comes in. So the lens you put in front of it is the most important part. Personally, all I think you really need is one or two lenses that you reach for with the Leica camera. And for me, that's like a 35 or a 28, a nice wide focal length, and then maybe a 50mm for some tighter stuff, which I'm not doing heaps of anyway. A lot of what I do is kind of street photography or out in the world where I want to see a lot, and I'm not doing heaps of portraits on this. You can do portraits on a Leica, but it's just not really for me. So again, if you can afford it, you can pick up a Summicron lens for Lord knows how much if you can afford it, or you can get a budget lens. 7 Artisans is doing some good stuff these days. They used to be kind of crap, but I think they're a lot better now. But if you're anything like me and you like to shoot at higher f-stops anyway, like at f8, just about any lens is going to be sharp-ish at that kind of aperture. So you'll be fine if you wanted to get a cheaper 7 Artisans lens. But more recently, I've been using the Voigtlander lenses. I recently just got this Voigtlander 28mm. I'm very excited to be using it a lot more often now. The 7 Artisans lenses are kind of a cheaper copy of the higher end Leica glass, so you are going to be making some sacrifices in terms of sharpness and consistency. But if you're anything like me and you like shooting at f8 or higher, then they'll be pretty sharp. It doesn't really matter. The one that I just got, the 28mm, the 28 Voigtlander, cost me like $1,100 brand new. You could easily find something cheaper secondhand. So your total now is $3,270, $3,270. That's in Australian. It might be cheaper where you are. So now you have a body, a lens, and a light meter, and you can stop here if you shoot natural light. But I want to put one last thing on your radar, and that's a flash. Leicas are pretty universal, and you can use a lot of different flashes on there. The one that I got cost me $150 on Amazon, and I think it's even cheaper if you're in America. You'd be pretty surprised at how decent this thing is for the money. This thing is packed with features. It operates as a video light as well as a speed light, and the speed light is pretty powerful. Like, you can light up a room with it, no problem. I use it on jobs and weddings and just hanging out with friends. It's a great option, and it doesn't cost anything. And it also works across camera bodies. I use it on my Leica and my R5 and my A7 IV. It's great, super universal. And the best thing about it, and my favorite feature, is that it is detachable. You can take the head off the hot shoe mount and use it as a wireless flash. It's great. It's a really nice way to bring a different look to your work if you want to go there, or if you want to have a bit more side light and less washed out at the front. For $150, you get more than what you pay for. Build quality is not amazing. This is my second one. My first one lasted maybe 6 or 8 months before it broke. I don't really know what happened. I might have dropped it or something, so I can't rule out my own stupidity. But even if you book one job off it and use it at one job, you made your money back. So to wrap up, let's check your cart. You now have a Leica M body and a Leica M lens. Maybe not a Leica lens, but they're decent enough on a budget. You have a flash and a light meter, and your total is $3,420, plus shipping and taxes. I don't know what your situation's like. So let's compare that total with a used M6 body. It's about the same. So you can get yourself a whole setup for about what an M6 body costs. Don't be stupid. You can buy a film with the cash you save. You could hire a studio. You could hire a stylist. You could buy a photography course. You could do lots of things with that money rather than just sink it all into an M6 or an MP. And you can start becoming a much better photographer by just investing in yourself rather than investing in gear. You do not need the sexiest Instagram, YouTube gear like an M6 or an MP to do amazing work. You can do a lot with what you have now and what you can get for cheap. If you want to eventually work your way up to an M6, MP, whatever, Q2, do it. You can. That stuff will come in time. That stuff will come when you book work, when you take jobs. And these are just tools to make life easier for you. It's not about the gear. It's about your work that you're doing. So in my opinion, the setup that I've been using, my M4P with the light meter and this lens and this flash, working perfectly fine for me. I really like it. The results are great, plenty sharp, and I've never had anyone ask me what Leica M camera I'm using. They don't care. Normal people, you'd be surprised. Normal people don't care what camera you're using. That's just you and me, man. So I hope this has been informative and, I don't know, takes the weight off your shoulders. You don't have to bust the bank to get a great camera or get a great Leica. And film's gonna die out again soon anyway, so I don't know.